It appears the White House might be struggling to build a crowd. Former White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci said the fact that he was invited to Trump's farewell ceremony tomorrow at Joint Base Andrews
that hurts.
Indicates the White House is desperate for guests. Welcome back to Morning Joe. It is Tuesday, January 19th. Along with Joe, Willie, and me, we have MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent and the host of Way Too Early, Casey Hunt, chief national correspondent for the New York Times, Mark Leibovich, and president and CEO of the National Urban League, Mark Morial, joins us. Great to have you all today.
Great to have you all with us. Hey, Willie, we haven't had a chance to talk since Sunday, but man, Tom Brady, what can you say?
Well, you can say that it's not close anymore who the greatest quarterback of all time is. He's got twice as many playoff wins as any quarterback in NFL history. Did it with a pretty good team, not a great team in Tampa, but somehow he finds a way. And that game on Sunday is going to be incredible. In Green Bay, Lambeau Field, 20 degrees, little snow flurries probably on Sunday. Aaron Rodgers against Tom Brady. I mean, we take Brady for granted. He's 43 years old. I mean, that 33 used to be the age where you'd start to talk about an NFL quarterback starting to wind things down. So he's obviously the best there ever was, and I think anyone who's counting him out on Sunday might lose some money.
It is amazing. I remember George Blanda trotting onto the field for the Oakland Raiders when he was like 43. The guy looked like, he was Hoss in Gunsmoke by the time he got out onto the field. See that picture of Y.A. Tittle down on the field and bleeding from his head? The guy, he was like 27 at the time probably. I mean, Brady isn't. Joey Scarborough told me at the beginning of the playoffs, he goes, Brady's going to make it to the Super Bowl. I said, no way. But I got to agree with you, Willie. I mean, I've always been a Joe Montana guy as far as who's the greatest quarterback. And I put Montana right at the top. Brady's close. And, you've got, of course, the Johnny Unitas's and the Namaths and everything. But, man, he's incredible. Mika, do you want to get in here and talk football for a second?
Actually, I was thinking of talking about the final full day of the Trump administration.
No, we're not going to do that. So anyway, Willie, does he make it to the Super Bowl?
Boy, it's going to be hard. Green Bay is really good, but as I said, I would never bet against Tom Brady in a big game. And the thing about watching him right now, you watch Drew Brees, who's had one of the great careers of all time and having trouble throwing the deep ball, and you can see that maybe he is going to retire. You watch Brady on Sunday, go, why not 3-4 more years? He looks as good as he's ever looked. And again, he's 43 years old. It's amazing.
Mike yeah, it is really unbelievable. Mike Barnicle, so the last day of the Trump administration, Mika and I wanted to ask you coming in, what's going on in Biden world? What are they thinking? I must say, you told me several weeks ago they were beyond themselves, nervous about just how bad the vaccine distribution rollout was going, and they had seen the plans and were horrified. And sure enough, they were right there. What are they thinking on the 19th of January?
Well, I think they're thinking the same thing they've been thinking since about November the 6th or 7th, Joe. In that, they've geared up, they're ready to go. Everyone who has been appointed or announced yet, not confirmed by the Senate, every cabinet post that has been announced, these are all people who know how to drive the car. There's no need for on-the-job training, driver training, any of that. Once they assume the position at noon tomorrow, they are ready to go. They've been ready to go for several weeks. And when you think about it, when you really, really think about it, we have not had a functioning president of the United States since the second week in November. I mean, I think you pushed his schedule, Trump's schedule earlier in the show. He has nothing on the schedule today. It's the same as nearly every other day since the election took place. The Biden people, especially Joseph R. Biden, the incoming president of the United States, has been performing many of the official functions of a president as he addresses the nation on specific topics as he's done. So they're ready to go. I think there is some trepidation about how much has been hidden by the existing administration? What are they going to find when they open the desk drawers? What are they going to find in terms of intelligence that was either not acted on, ignored, or abused? All sorts of little things. But as far as the big thing, the priority, getting this vaccine into people's arms, they are ready to roll on that. And could I add one little addendum about Tom Brady?
Please.
If you have a
Oh,
chance,
boy.
and I'm sure you've seen it, watch the clip of Tom Brady on the field with
Yes.
Drew Brees and his family for one specific reason. As Tom Brady leaves Drew Brees and walks off that field, he turns to Brees' boys who are in the end zone, and he looks at them and says, "Take care of your sister." That's good parenting.
Wow. That really is. That really is. Two class acts there. So Mike had said that we haven't had a functioning president since November. I would argue we really haven't had a functioning president since January 20th, 2017, because this has been a president who's governed by gesture, who hasn't wanted to get the daily briefings, who hasn't gotten the who hasn't done his job. He's watched cable news.
Yeah.
He's been on Twitter. He hasn't done the big things. He doesn't know how to pass legislation. He doesn't know how to do much of anything. And when he ran off what few competent people he had around him in 2017, things, Mika, went from very bad to much worse. And he's spread conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And that's really been about it. It's going to be good, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, it's going to be good to have people who know how to do their jobs inside the White House. It's not just me saying that. The Chamber of Commerce is now saying, forget ideology. We just want people who know how to do their jobs. We've got a centered, down the center Senate, a down the center House. We've got a moderate Democratic president. There are a lot of people that just want to see them do their jobs after 4 years of madness.
So as we look forward right now to the final full day of the Trump administration, the president's schedule has plenty of what the White House used to call executive time. In fact, there's nothing on the president's official schedule other than the note claiming he will, and I'm serious when I say this, this is what they have released. President Trump will work from early in the morning until late in the evening. He will make many calls and have many meetings. Wow. We're awaiting news on pardons that the president is planning, with the New York Times reporting White House counselors are worried the action could hurt him with Republican senators at his impeachment trial. Tomorrow, the Trumps will break with modern tradition once again in not greeting the Bidens at the White House, making President Trump the first living president not to attend his successor's inauguration in 152 years.
Look
Look at this. Look at the Obamas, who, by the way,
look at this.
Trump was pushing the birther stuff. He was trying to say that Obama was born in Kenya. He had that. And look at the Obamas, as classy as they come and not knowing what to do with an inappropriate gift. Anywho, so according to the Washington Post, the president is still enraged about celebrities snubbing Trump's own inauguration in 2017.
That's what you should worry about right now.
The Post reports that in recent days, Trump was particularly upset that Lady Gaga, Jennifer Lopez, Tom Hanks, and other stars agreed to perform as part of Biden's inaugural celebrations. Meanwhile, President Trump is exiting the White House with his personal worst job approval rating in the latest Gallup poll. It makes him the only president in the company's 80-plus year polling history to never break the 50% threshold. The most recent numbers show just 34% of Americans approve of the president's job in office, 62% disapprove. When looking at his average approval rating, President Trump is the most unpopular president in Gallup's history by over 4 points, sitting behind Presidents Obama, Ford, Carter, and Truman at 41.1%.
Well, and that leaves both the Bushes and JFK and Ike and Johnson, everybody else higher than him. Mark Leibovich, what I have found so fascinating about Donald Trump regarding these poll numbers is he's a guy that if he had just talked about the economy, most likely he would have stayed over 50%. He would have gone over 50%. He would have stayed. He couldn't do it. And even when it seemed like he got breaks, even when there was this pause and the playing field seemed set up for Donald Trump to run through this massive hole in the line while we continue on football, and I'm a dumb guy and I do my football analogies. He has a hole wide open that he can run through. He decides to turn around and run toward the other end zone. You look at what happened the day after. He felt completely vindicated after the Mueller report is dropped and Mueller testifies. When things are breaking his way and his supporters are running victory laps, Donald Trump picks up the phone and then decides to call the president of Ukraine, blackmail him with military support that the Congress has already approved in return for him digging up dirt on his political opponent. This is a guy who just could never stand success of any kind.
It's true. What is remarkable about his poll numbers is that so much of it was self-inflicted. I mean, you think of a couple of inflection points. I mean, one was when the coronavirus started in March. Everyone was saying, okay, well, this is a lot that no president would ever envy. It's a really, really challenging situation. And immediately Donald Trump, as seems to be his nature, was thinking, oh boy, now I'm really in trouble. And I mean, I'm just going to deny that this is happening and hope that no one notices that there's this virus that's ravaging and killing thousands of people, every week. And so he could have very easily just sort of stepped back. And if he was capable of the kind of sort of leadership and empathy that a lot of people sort of wished he did, even people close to him from the very beginning, it could have been something he not only survived, but actually was enhanced by, as a lot of governors across the country have been, as a lot of public figures across the world have been. So obviously, I mean, there was that. And then even after the election, I mean, November, say, 6th, 7th, after Biden was declared victor, this could be, if he were just to sort of act like a normal losing presidential candidate and be gracious and engage in a normal transition period, he probably would, I mean, his approval numbers would probably be about 10 points higher than it is now. And he would be extremely well positioned, probably going forward, to be the Republican nominee in 2024. He still, could be, but certainly, I mean, his posture would be very, very enhanced, more so than it is now. And a lot of it was just self-inflicted.
Time and again, you're exactly right. I mean, he'd be set up to travel across the world, go to all of the countries with autocratic leaders that he cozied up to, could have made a fortune, because I know that's what's important to him. But he also would have been a conquering hero among the 75 million people who voted for him. You talk about opportunities. And now, again, he gets in his own way. There are these self-inflicted wounds. And Willie, this presidential race, let's look at after the presidential race, but let's look at the weeks leading into the presidential race. Like, even after that horrible first debate performance, if he had just focused on the economy, if he had just kept it as sane and rational as he could have. And people say, oh, well, he's not capable of that. Yes, he did that the last 10 days of the 2016 campaign, which is why he won. He still could have been reelected president of the United States. And given the small margins, he would have been reelected president of the United States. It is, again, remarkable time and again, the self-inflicted wounds that this guy burdened himself with. He spent all of his days looking for enemies when the real political enemy was right in front of him in the mirror. He could have run on the economy and won by 4 points.
Yeah, and if you go back even farther than that, to the beginning, almost a year ago, of this public health crisis that as of about midnight last night has killed 400,000 Americans, he likes to talk about being a wartime president, loves talking about the generals, reflects back and through history on generals that he admires. He could have been that kind of figure. He could have stood at that podium every day and said, I'm in charge here. We're taking this on. We're going to have to lock down for a little while, but by this coming summer, life will be back to normal. Instead, he chose to wish it away. He chose to talk about conspiracies. He chose to talk about it being a hoax that the media had concocted. He could have been front and center taking this on in a serious way and led with the scientists and actually been the guy that he likes to pretend he is, which is a big, strong leader. Meanwhile now, Joe Biden, I'm looking at the clock here, 29 hours, will be president of the United States. And in the wake of that Capitol riot on January 6th, transition officials say the Biden administration plans to make domestic terrorism a key focus of the National Security Council. Officials have been looking at ways to shift government resources that have been used for counterterrorism to combating specifically domestic terrorism. The incoming administration plans to make announcements on the effort in the early days after Biden takes office tomorrow. President-elect Biden also says he will roll out an overhaul of the country's immigration laws on his first day as president. His plan will include an 8-year pathway to citizenship for immigrants without legal status, will expand refugee admissions, introduce an enforcement plan that deploys technology to patrol the border, and include a focus on addressing the root causes of migration from Central America. The Washington Post reports the proposal would give temporary status to millions of qualifying immigrants for 5 years and then grant them a green card once they meet certain requirements such as background checks and paying taxes. Applicants would then be allowed to apply for citizenship 3 years later. So, Casey Hunt, let's talk about the chances of this and other ideas that the Biden administration is proposing getting through a 50-50 Congress. We've already heard yesterday from some Republican senators, chiefly Tom Cotton of Arkansas, Republican, saying this is amnesty again. Here we go. This has no chance of getting through.
Yeah, there's no issue like immigration to send everyone scurrying back to their corners and digging into old divisions and ways of doing business. I think this is clearly a move that shows that the Biden team understands they're also going to have to manage their progressive left. You know, we've obviously talked a ton about Biden's relationship with McConnell and how he does want to take a chance to try and work with Republicans. But now that Democrats control both the Senate and the House, that's actually, in an interesting way, likely to give more power to the left wing of the party. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on this issue. This is a place where a lot of activists, immigration activists, have criticized the Obama administration. They criticized him for putting this on the back burner, for focusing on other priorities before they got around to doing immigration reform. And my initial read on this is an attempt to not make that mistake again for a critical group that the Biden team needs here. But they are going to have to make a decision about what they want to do first. Because, you know, as we know, and I know Joe has experienced this when he was a member of Congress and covered it extensively since, he's got 2 years where he's going to control the House, the Senate, and the White House. And he's going to get one, maybe two major shots on goal to get something big done. And he's got a chance now because Chuck Schumer will put it on the floor. The first one's likely to be a big economic package. And then they're going to have to decide, do they want to have a knockdown, drag-out fight over immigration? Do they want to try to do climate change? That seems to be a pretty significant focus. That seems to me like something they actually might be able to accomplish. But they're going to have to make those decisions early on because they're just not going to have that many chances to get something big and sweeping across the finish line in such a divided Congress.
Well, and they're really not, Casey. And let me just say this, and let me just make everybody angry right now.
Already?
I'll just make everybody on the left angry right now. Okay? This has nothing to do with ideology. This has to do with numbers. This has to do with basic arithmetic. There's not going to be sweeping progressive reforms that are going to pass through this Congress. So the progressives and moderates are going to have to think strategically and figure out a way to pass legislation that's not going to be what they consider to be great, but may just be good, may just be a step forward. Politics is the art of the possible, and what is possible, Casey Hunt, is that Democrats can pass bipartisan reforms. Because you talk about climate change. All right, great. Guess what? You're going to have to talk to Joe Manchin about that, because Joe's the 50th vote. And if you can't get Joe, maybe you're going to have to go to Maine and get Susan Collins, maybe Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, maybe Mitt Romney in Utah. But whatever it is, that's the framing of it. Of course, it's going to be exciting for a lot of people that he can get the United States back into Paris by, just signing his name on an executive order. But Casey, this is going to take a lot of skill. And we always said, Republicans always said, if Bill Clinton had started first with welfare reform instead of failed health care reform, which was too sweeping in a lot of people's eyes in 1993, Democrats wouldn't have lost control of Congress. Of course, we can have that debate time and again. But what he chooses first, you are exactly right. That is critical because it frames the next 2 years for him.
It really does, Joe. And he is going to, I think, have a chance to see if he can work in the way that you just outlined, if there is a possible way forward with the center of the Senate. There's a lot they can do with a procedure called reconciliation that would only take Democratic votes, but it's limited and it doesn't do the broad, sweeping legislative changes that you then turn into a legacy. They can do some things with that, but it does not offer the full toolbox. And a lot of this is going to be up to Mitch McConnell as well. Is there going to be a sense that, okay, we just got thrown out of power. We got to figure out a way to actually work going forward. And climate change is a tricky one, but there's a lot of cross currents and interests, and it's a place where you could, in theory, build consensus by giving a lot of different people what they want. So I do think that that is a possible area where it could work. But Mark Morial, I actually want to ask you about this, because we are heading into this administration in just such a highly charged atmosphere. There are so many crises to deal with, and we obviously have been having just a horrible reckoning around race. And when I think about some of the slogans and things that those people who attacked the Capitol were saying and doing, it is just so awful and difficult to grapple with. And we've got to figure out how to fix it. So I guess my question to you is, how do you start that? Is there something they can do in Congress around reconciliation? I mean, we need a new Voting Rights Act. We don't have one. How does the Biden administration grapple with that? And where do you want to see them put that on the priority list?
I think, well, first, and thank you, good morning to all, and don't rub in the Saints lost too much for me. I'm still in pain. But, Casey, here's the point.
I'm a Saints fan myself, too.
Yeah, I love the Saints. You start with your inauguration speech and the words and the vision that you shape, because the power of the presidency is the power of the bully pulpit. And to set the right tone, and that tone has to be a hard break from the 4 years of Donald Trump's divisive rhetoric, Donald Trump's divisive policies, Donald Trump's divisive personality. That's number one. Number two, voting rights and fixing democracy is a very important element, I think, of healing the nation. We have always in this nation, up until most recently, looked at voting rights as a bipartisan enterprise. In 65, in 72, in 82, in 2005 and 6, when it was renewed, it was always with large bipartisan majorities. It would be a perfect way to secure democracy, to fix the power of the ballot, to ensure that as we go into reapportionment, racially motivated dilution and gerrymandering will not be legal in this nation. But beyond that, I feel that January 6th was a defining moment in American history. And I think it creates, amidst great tragedy, an opportunity for there to be a new consensus around democracy, a new consensus around some of these difficult issues, whether it's immigration, voting rights, criminal justice reform, or climate change. I see Biden with an opportunity to create, if you will, a new and different kind of coalition. And when you step away from Washington and the blue shirt, red shirt Washington, you see a consensus amongst American people, strong support, I would say, for things like immigration and voting rights and criminal justice reform and climate change and injecting money to fix the economy, and among young people particularly, a real desire to confront racial injustice in this country. So we've got to make sure that we're hearing what people in the neighborhoods, people in the cities, people in the suburbs, people in the villages and towns and hamlets are saying about where we are as a nation. January 6th was defining because we saw something we've never seen since the founding of this nation, with the exception of the Civil War.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm so glad we have you on because you've done this before. You understand what it's like actually getting the votes to get things passed. You brought up, I think, a remarkable place to start. Follow through on the promise of John Lewis. Pass John Lewis's Voting Rights Act bill that he tried to pass in 2019. That's the sort of thing listen, I keep talking about Joe Manchin. I talk about Joe Manchin because 68% of West Virginians voted for Donald Trump, and only 29% of West Virginians voted for Joe Biden at the same time. I'm sure Joe Manchin would love to help carry the ball over the goal line, more sports metaphors, for John Lewis's Voting Rights Act. That's something Susan Collins could get behind, Lisa Murkowski. That's something that a lot of Republicans could get behind as well. That would be a great start. And you talk about fixing democracy. Give us an example of a reform that Republicans and Democrats alike could support. Like, I know that they can get 50+1 for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. What's another example of one of these democratic reforms?
We need some guardrails around money in politics, transparency, big money, independent money that affects American politics. I think we need to go back and look at it. Look, one of the tragedies of the Supreme Court was knocking down the McCain-Feingold legislation in Citizens United. That was a bipartisan bill that had broad consensus across the nation. So we've got to fix money. But I would say, Joe, and to the entire panel, passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act in the first 100 days would be a down payment in a significant way towards repairing American democracy, because the damage that's been done since the Shelby v. Holder decision is documentable, it's palpable. States have been found to exclude and discriminate based on race by numerous courts. We can fix that, but COVID. Let's do COVID. Let's do something to rebuild the economy. Americans are suffering. People in neighborhoods are on the brink of eviction, foreclosure, the pain. We are in a different time. This is not 92. This is not 2000. This is not even 2008. We're in a different point in time. And I think American people want action. They want action. And they don't want fiddling, faddling, and the usual Washington obfuscation and obstruction. They want action.
All right, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. And let's hope it doesn't take 100 days to pass John Lewis's Voting Rights Bill. That's something they should do in the first couple of weeks. Thank you so much, Mark Morial, for being with us. And still have
Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. She is a member of the Senate's Joint Congressional Committee on the inaugural ceremonies, and she'll have a leading role in the swearing in of President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris tomorrow. Starting there, can you talk? Can you talk about how different this is going to be, and, if possible, what this moment will mean, or hopefully will mean?
Oh, sure. Mika, I was thinking back as I watched the show this morning about that being together when you guys broadcast at your first inauguration for the show from the Dubliner in 2009 for Barack Obama's first inauguration, and that joy that we all felt. And I want to take a little of that joy and bring it forth for tomorrow, because we know the events in the Capitol of January 6th and also the pandemic have greatly changed this inauguration. Joe Biden wanted a safe inauguration. That's why you see these beautiful flags covering the mall. But it is still going to be this moment of renewal, because this is the moment at 12:01 p.m. tomorrow. I think we have about a little over 28 hours left here. He and Kamala Harris will be sworn in as the president and the vice president. And he will have a chance to talk about his vision for the country, for so many people who, in his words, souls, right, need restored, for so many people who've lost loved ones during this pandemic. And I've so appreciated how on the show this morning, you guys actually went through some of the agenda and things he's going to accomplish and needs to get done, because we need to move forward as a country. And yes, there's increased security, but at the same time, we have to remember what this is all about. Our democracy literally picking itself up, dusting itself off, and moving forward.
Casey Hahn, jump in.
Senator Klobuchar, good morning, and I appreciate your notes of hope, and I usually try to find some cheerfulness, but I have to say it's been such a difficult couple of weeks at the Capitol. My question for you is simply, are you going to feel safe at the inauguration on that stage, and will your colleagues feel that way too?
I do feel safe, and I understand the enormous concerns for those of us who were in the Capitol that day. Few things. One, this inauguration has always been run differently. Every inauguration recently has been run by the Secret Service. There has always been planning for a year ahead with the Defense Department and the like. We know that military has brought in that 2009 inauguration I mentioned. I remember talking to my Minnesota National Guard. A lot of that has been because of the crowds, but this is more of a focus on security. If there's some sudden change, they'll make the call and everyone will listen. But at this point, I was out on that stage right in the area where the protesters had stormed in. Of course, they went up to that platform. They were trying to destroy the very platform where Joe Biden is going to be sworn in. And I heard the rehearsals with the Marine Band, and it was a beautiful moment. And I think all America is going to be sharing in that moment, knowing that the world is not the same as it was 10 years ago, but we have to move forward, and that's what this inauguration is about.
Let's go to Mike Barnacle. Mike?
Hi, Mike.
Senator, as you know, and as you've lived, we are living in a nation that has been partially broken over the past 4 years. So if you could please tell us about a moment, and it will be a moment, that's going to occur tomorrow when 3 former presidents join then President Biden at Arlington National Cemetery. What is going to go on there?
This is, of course, to me, a lot of this is about the leaders surrounding to-be President Biden, and making sure that we remember those we've lost, but also that he is coming into office not alone. The fact that Vice President Pence and that former President Bush are going to be on that stage, in addition to nearly every single person in leadership in the Republican Party that's elected in Congress. That is why this is so important. I mean, there have been people that said he shouldn't do something like go to Arlington. He shouldn't do the inauguration. Well, guess what? He's not going to spend his presidency in the bunker because this mad, angry mob was incited by the existing president to go down the mall and invade Congress. So I think all of this, it's a sense of ceremony. It's a sense of respect for those that we've lost, but it is also a vision for the future. And you can't do that alone. And Joe Biden's always said that when he's talked about, when he was announced the victor the first of 13 times, where on that stage in Wilmington, he said, look, I'm going to give you guys a chance, people who voted for Trump, if you'll give me a chance. And I think that spirit is still going to be there starting tomorrow.
What does the United States Senate do with Josh Hawley? 3 newspapers in his state have called for his resignation, demanded that he be expelled. Now 3 newspapers in the state of Texas have called for Ted Cruz's resignation, or that he should be expelled from the United States Senate. How do you work day in and day out with 2 members of Congress, 2 members of the United States Senate, who led an insurrection against the United States of America and seem to be unapologetic about the fact that they were responsible for the death of a Capitol Hill police officer and the worst breach in the United States Capitol since the War of 1812?
I didn't want them there in the first place. Obviously, I didn't support them. I'd be very pleased if they resigned. But I think one of the first things we need is accountability. And especially when you hear about some of the allegations in the House about people potentially giving tours and reconnaissance tours to some of these insurrectionists, I think there'll be investigations of that. I think some of this could be referred to ethics. And then after that, we'll see who is still in Congress, and you then move on and you find some way to reconcile. But am I reaching out to them to do bills or to do work right now? Of course not. There are plenty of people like a Mitt Romney and a Susan Collins and a Lisa Murkowski and so many others who were willing to stand up and call this as it was. And in the end, in the Senate, as you know, Joe, we ended up with only 6, 7 of them, depending on the vote, actually voting to overturn the will of the people. In the Senate, over 90% of the senators on that night, with some of them switching their votes during the day as they saw the fruits of what this effort had brought about, they actually change their votes. And I think that you're going to start seeing some people being willing to work on issues which we've already seen in the past. Immigration, which you brought up, we were gut punched by Trump, a bipartisan group of us. That is really a path where we could get some things done. Infrastructure, the pandemic package, obviously, economics. There's so much work to be done for the American people. And they're just looking at us going, you know what? I'm juggling my toddler on my knee and my laptop on my desk. I'm teaching my first grader how to use the mute button. I haven't been able to see my mom in the nursing home for nearly a year. Those people are depending on us to get something done. And I think that we can bring this president to justice at the same time we work to get Joe's nominees passed, as well as get legislation through. That's what we got to do. America's juggling stuff every day, and the Congress better do it starting tomorrow.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, amen. Thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. We'll be watching it all.